What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Logisticalstyles coming at you with another video. And today we are going to be doing a tutorial or pretty much a product dive. We're going to look into the Serato Remote app. It's an old app that's been around for quite a while, about 7 years now. Not a whole lot updates have been made for it, but it's still very relevant and it's still something that you can still use with your current Serato DJ Pro software. So what we're going to do is check out all the features and the way it really integrates with it, and I'm going to show you how I use it with the Newmark Scratch Mixer. The Newmark Scratch Mixer is a somewhat limited mixer as far as features go. It is a Serato enabled mixer that does allow you to open up the full software and be able to control it with DVS mode, and you have your cue point buttons, you have some effects control, but it's very limited as what it can do. You only have 4 pads that you can use for your cue points versus the full 8 that you might find on a Reign 72 or even a Pioneer S9 type of mixer. So using this app, you'll be able to get full use of all those cue points, and even more, you'll have more control over your effects, more control over your sampler, and even the slicer mode if that's something you're into using. We're going to jump into a view from the iPad so you can actually see everything I'm doing, and it can make a little bit more sense. And I'll probably jump into the overhead as well so you can see how it relates with, my decks, my mixer, and what you see on the screen. There's a couple of different views you can use with the Serato Remote. It allows you to get as much or as little information that you need available to you on the screen, and you can actually jump around to different views that allow you to control your cue points and your effects at the same time, or maybe even your cue points and your sampler. It allows you to see your virtual decks, and you get a little bit of a waveform display. One thing that I do wish they did have in the Serato Remote app, and that is the ability to do like vertical or horizontal waveforms like you have in the actual software on your laptop. But I think they had to make some concessions because you only have so much screen real estate compared to a laptop screen. So what you do get is you get the option to have your virtual decks available. You get to have a control which will allow you to scroll through your library and through your crates, and then you get control over your trigger pads for your cue points, your sampler, your effects controls, and then your looping control as well. You also get to control the quantization and the sync features as well. Those buttons are there. They did add some buttons. It's been years since they've done an update for it, but the buttons they did add on the last update really did come in handy. So we'll talk about that as well. You can get this app for both the iPhone and for the iPad. On the iPhone, it shows up a little bit differently, and you are a little restricted because you don't have such a big screen. But with the iPad, you do get the full blown up version. The 2 different versions are separate products on the App Store. So I think obviously the iPhone version is a little cheaper than the full version for the iPad, but we'll go over that once we jump into the App Store so you can see how to download it, and we can see some of the features and some of the updates that were made to the app over the years. So now with all that said and done, let's go ahead and jump into the iPad and let's see what we have here with this Serato Remote app. Okay, so here we are on my iPad's home screen, and we're going to go ahead and jump into the App Store first. So we can go ahead and do a search for the Serato Remote, and you'll see right here we have the Serato Remote. I'm going to tap on it. That brings up it. It's going to give you some other options like the DJ. We're not looking for a DJ app right now. We're looking for Serato Remote, and I'm going to go ahead and click open the App Store description of it so you can see. These are some of the screenshots that they have. You can preview. You can see there's quite a few screens that you can jump through. And if we go down, we can see that back in 2014, this app actually won an award from DJ Mag. It was a tech award. They won this award because it was a really great concept when it first came out. And it really still is good. I mean, it's got mediocre reviews. I'd say they're probably halfway. These are all 3 out of 5 star reviews. And these are mostly all having the same complaints, is that it needs updates. Let's go ahead and take a look at this right here. Some more information about it. So doesn't take up a lot of space to download it onto your iPad, about 7 megabytes worth of space. This, if you look at the copyright, you'll notice the copyright on this is 2017. And usually when something is put out, you can tell just by checking the copyright about how much they put into it, how much effort they put into it. I'm going to go over here into the version history. And you can see that the last update was done 3 years ago. App initially came out 7 years ago, version 1.0. Then they had a small update, 1.0.1, which was user interface updates. Did some bug fixes with 1.0.2. Then a year later, they came out with 1.1, which was kind of a big update because they included the slicer feature. And not a lot of people use slicers, so I'm not sure how big of an update that was as far as usefulness. But then the next one was the 1.2 update, which came about around that same year. And that is when they added the play button, the sync button, Quantize, and cue point name display. That's really cool. That's a really cool feature because you'll see when I pull up the app, you will be able to see the names of the cue points that you've labeled them. You can do that on the laptop version as well, but you don't really see it as much because you're not always staring. You don't have your laptop always in front of you, or you shouldn't be staring at your laptop that much. But when it's on the iPad and it's right there in front of you, the text is a little bit bigger and it's a little more useful there. But then after that, the next upgrade was the 1.3.0, which was 3 years ago. And that was because of the update to the iOS. So once iOS 10.3 came out, they had to make some changes in order to keep the app up to date. If we go into my iPad and look at my software about, you'll see that we are on 14.4. So it's been quite a while since the app has been updated. So I've already downloaded it. So I'm going to go ahead and open the app. This is right here what the icon looks like. It's this, well, let me go into my DJ apps. This right here, the Serato Remote. This is what the app icon looks like. When I open it up at first, it searches for a compatible or a connected MacBook. And it can see my MacBook here because it's connected. When you first get the app and you want to connect it to your Serato, you have 2 options. You have a wireless option, and then you have the cable connected option. I choose the cable connected option because that has less latency. When you're working with it over Wi-Fi, your iPad has to be on the same Wi-Fi network as your laptop in order for it to communicate. And I believe the first time you set it up, you do have to connect it via the cable so you can get a good connection. I'm using a iPad Air 4th generation that has the USB-C connection. So I had to get an adapter to go from USB-C to a regular USB connection, which is hooked up to my MacBook's USB port. So once you get your iPad connected to your laptop, well, the first thing you have to do is have to have Serato opened up. And I guess we'll have to jump over to the computer so we can actually see what it takes to connect the app to your laptop. So here we are in the settings for Serato. If you go over here and you click this gear up top, click that gear, and then you can go into your expansion packs, and then you have to have the Serato Remote expansion pack. That's an important part to have. I think you just download it from the website, because once you have the Serato Remote app on your iPad or your iPhone, you'll be able to just connect it. But you have to have the Serato Remote expansion pack added to your computer. And then once it's there, then as you connect it to different devices, you'll see a list of them down here. I have I have two iPhones, so both of the phones have the app on it. My iPad, and then some of these are duplicates, or it may have been a time when I used a family member's iPhone as well to connect. I've had several iPhones, so I can see why I have so many, and then I've had a couple of iPads. But you'll see right here it says this one is in use. This is the iPad that I'm currently using. So let's go back into the main screen, and we'll jump back over to the iPad. So here on the iPad, you see my iPad shows up, Derek's iPad. So if I click on here, then it pulls up pretty much a duplicate of what you're seeing on the screen, minus a few details, such as you don't see the library, you don't see the crates, you don't see the waveform, which I have on my laptop. I use the vertical waveform, but you don't get to see that. But you get to see your virtual decks. You get to see your play button. You get to see the sync. And as we go through these buttons, I start messing with settings, you'll see some other things. All right, so first thing you'll notice, you have your cue points here. Your cue points will probably be, you'll at least have 3 cue points regardless of what screen or what view you're looking at. They understand the importance of being able to have the cue points available. And the cool thing about this is whatever I do on the app can be also manipulated on my mixer as well. So you'll see that when I get into the effects, or even with the sampler. So you have, let's bring some volume up. Just like if I'm pressing the button on my mixer, or if I'm pressing on the iPad, or even pressing the quick key on my laptop, cue buttons work. So that's a cool thing right away. It opens up another way for you to trigger your cue points. If you want to, you can mark them all, set cue points on all of them. You get all the colors, the same colors that show up on the laptop also show up on the app. If you want to delete a cue point, you hit this X down here, and then the X will show up on all the all the pads with cue points assigned, and you can just tap whichever one you want to get rid of. Each time you click an X, you'll have to click the X back again to do another one, or you can just hold it down and just get rid of them all like that. Then you have your option for your looping, which is right there. You can choose the length of your loop. Right there, just by tapping the left or the right arrows. You can auto loop it. Once you choose what size you want that loop to be, you tap it, and then on the screen you'll see that the loop is there. If you make it shorter, it'll get shorter, and you can see that on the screen. Next, you have the option to go into your sampler. And then in your sampler, you can see I have 5 slots loaded up right now. You can go to your different banks and have more slots loaded up. This isn't the full power of the sampler, because if this was on the mixer, you would have all 8 pads available. There's actually 8 slots per bank. So on the app, you get options to have access to 6 pads per bank. You can label them. You can control them as far as to how they play back. You can start or stop them. You can change the volume of the sampler by using this slider right here. Logic. You can go into your settings over here, and this will allow you to go into preferences. Well, the first page on the settings is your connection. You could choose to set up your wireless connection if it wasn't already set up. You can choose another MacBook to connect to if there was another Mac with your setup. Maybe you were doing a tag team and you were switching over, and somebody else wanted to use the iPad with the app. You could just switch it over to their computer. You can disconnect it from your computer completely. You can go into your preferences, and then this gives you 2 different layout choices. You get the virtual decks, is which you saw initially, and then you can go with just the track info, so you can get rid of the decks. So let's choose that and go out. And now you see I don't have the virtual decks, but I do get the information about the song. I get the artist name, the song name, the BPM, time remaining. Um, you get a tab button here. The tab button is pretty cool because it allows you to jump from your library out of the list of songs into the list of crates, and you can do it back again. This is the same feature that would be on like a mixer or the Range 12 that has a library controlling feature. It's just labeled as a back button on that hardware, but on the app it's labeled tab. And this actually showed me a really cool feature using just the laptop. The tab key does the same thing on your laptop. So if you hit tab on your laptop, you can jump in and out from your crate list to your actual song list in the crate. So the tab button acts the same as a back button. Next, we can go into the slicer mode. I'm actually not a slicer user, so I don't have it enabled. Let me go into my Serato and enable my beat grids real quick. So we go back to the gear, go to DJ preferences. Let's see about beat grids. Snap to beat grid, turn that on. Beat grid's turned on. Go back here, and in the app, you notice that I got rid of that message about needing to have beat grid enabled. If you do use the slicer mode and you're familiar with the way these features work, you will know what you're looking at when you're into it. But I'm not a big slicer mode user. I prefer the other three tabs, which are your pads, your sampler. The sampler section is dope because you get to see the labels that you put. You can see the name of the track that you have loaded into your sampler. These are some drops and some sound effects. You can change the volume using this slider on the touchscreen right here. You can slide up and down, and you can stop a sample. You can switch to a different bank of samples. This shows you that you get six slots per bank. You have 4 banks, so you can add a lot of samples. It still has the default where if you switch banks, if you trigger, like I'll show you, if you are here and you trigger a sound, but you switch bank, it kills the sound that you triggered because you switched banks. So that's still kind of a fault. People have been complaining about that for years now. You should be able to switch banks, hit a sample, switch to another bank, that sample still play, and kind of almost layers some of these samples. But that's something we need to talk to Serato about. But it's cool that we have this sample volume slider right here. Definitely cool to have that, so you can different volumes for your sampler. So that's definitely dope. Then you have your effects tab, and this is cool because you can choose between what effects you want to have. Like these are the ones, my favorites that I've loaded up. You can go in and you can edit your favorite effects, so you can change these. These don't have to be what's showing here. And a lot of this is also going to depend on what effects expansion packs you have loaded. In my case, if I go to my on the computer, if I go to my settings and check my expansion packs, I can see that I have the let's see, my effects. Yeah, I've got the base pack that comes with Serato DJ. Then you have the Wolf pack, which is an expansion pack, the backpack, and I think there's another one as well. But those are the ones I have. But you can go ahead and customize which one your favorites are and put them in this list right here, so you can have easy access to them. Let's go back here. You have this button right here, the on button that's labeled. This will turn it on, and the slider right next to it will change the depth of it, the dry wetness of it. You can also change the beat of it using the arrows left and right. Let's see. Let's play a song. See. You can turn that off. no effects turned on. Make it a little bit dry. Wet. Choose another effect. Flanger. And you'll notice when I switched effects, it automatically brought the dry wetness down to pretty much dry. So you don't accidentally trigger the wrong effect and it's making some kind of crazy sound. So you can kind of ease your way into it. If I go in and choose to go with a little bit of reverb. Now, if you want to change the beat indication from, like you notice I just went from a half to a full beat, you just press that button on the screen and go left or right, and the numbers will go up or down. They'll go up if you go towards the right, go down if you go towards the left. And it's really dope because let me go back to that effects. If you start messing with your effects on the app, but then you move back your hands back to the mixer, you can just hit the paddle or whatever control you have for your effects on the mixer. You can hit that real quick and it will make it fall in line to what the setting on the mixer is. So they each can kind of take control. Basically, they can take over. I can control my effects from here, and I can see the change happen within the app on my screen. And then from the screen, I can just turn it off, even though my paddle is still in the engage button, in the engaged position. I turned it off through the app. If I click it back off, you won't hear a change again until I go back to either engage it with the hold or with the momentary push down. So that's pretty dope. And within the app, if you didn't want to use your built-in controls, you have that same thing here. They just label it differently than it is on the mixer. On the mixer, pushing the paddle up puts it into a hold position. Pushing down is a temporary spring-loaded position. And on the app, if you push it up, that's called latching. Temp would be this, where it's only applied until I let go of my finger from the screen, then it goes off. So it just depends on how you like to work with your effects. You can use that temp mode where you're just doing that, or you can go to latch, and this is where you turn it on and you keep it in position until you either change it on the app or you change it on your mixer. Now let's switch over to this settings tab with the gears on the right hand side. If I click on that, it brings up these three tabs. You have the main tab, which is you controlling your connection, whether you want to connect to a different iPad or you want to connect to a different MacBook Pro. You want to set up your wireless situation, or if you just want to disconnect it completely. The disconnect button really isn't necessary because all you have to do really is just pull the cable off and it will disconnect without causing any problem. If you go into your preferences section, you see that you can switch between the virtual deck view and you can choose the track info view. The virtual deck view gives you obviously the virtual decks that you see on Serato DJ on the laptop screen. You see the spinning deck with your speed and the time remaining and time used information. But if you go to track info, you get a little bit more. You get what I have on the screen now, which is the artist name, the song name, the BPM, and the time remaining, time left. You also have a tab button the tab button I think is actually there on both, even the tab and the quick effects. I'll show you that in a second. But they're both there as well, but you just have a little bit more screen real estate. It's just a different view. So let's go back into the settings again and look at this third tab, which is the edit favorite effects. This is where you can load up all those effects that you saw on my list before. And this is where you can also switch between how you want to use your effects, because I'm using it in a very simple way where there's just one effect being controlled by one knob. But you can also switch over here to the three effects controlled by three knobs. And if we go back into the main screen, after we made that change and go into our effects, let's see, you hit this arrow that points up or down, and it just expands the screen a little bit. And this will happen on any tab that you're in. You can expand the screen to just really focus on what you have selected, whether it be your pad, sampler, slicer, or the effects mode. So in here, I can go to multiple effects. Let me go back to the settings, edit. So you can set combos of different effects. I'm more of a one knob person, one super knob that controls it all. If I wanted to, I could add maybe Fanger, Flazer. Maybe we can do a little. Okay, so the ones that are not highlighted or don't have the black background, those are the ones I've already loaded. So let's add just a regular delay. Regular delay, you just tap on it and it adds it to that list. If you want to get rid of it, you tap on it and that pulls it away from the list. So let's add it back to the list. You hit this clear fave effects button and that will clear them all. You get the option, you get confirmation to say yes, make sure you clear them. And then if you want, you can just add the ones you want back again just by tapping on them. Those are the ones I use the most, maybe a little bit of that pan delay. Then let's go back to the main screen. The effects are pulled up fully. Let me pull that down. Let's go back to the pad mode and hit that expansion button. Brings it up and it shows you your samplers. So I got my pads for my cue points, all 8 of them down there. Then I get 6 of my sampler pads when I expand that section. I also still have my looping. I get a little option for looping in and out, so it's not just auto looping. I also get my manual looping as well when you expand that screen. So if we bring it down again, then we get the, let's go back into the sampler. Let's expand that screen, and it removes all the song information, but then you get more control over the way your loops operate. I mean, your samples, the way they operate. You can, instead of like right now, this logic drop is just it's a one hit. You hit it, you trigger it, and go. But maybe I want it to loop. It's just looping now. So I can turn that off. I can hit this again and make it just, and it will trigger the loop only as long as I'm holding the button. Now let's go into the mixer itself, switch to sample mode and see if it operates the same way. Yep, so the change I made in the app reflected to the mixer as well. If I switch the type of trigger, type of trigger it is, now it's going to play all the way 1. So you got a few options with this one particular button right here. When it's red with the little dashes, that means every time I hit the button, it's going to start it over, so you can kind of do a little stutter. Then, if you want to hit it again, you get this orange symbol. If you remember from your old math class, this is like a line segment because there's a start and stop to it. So you hit that once, or you hit it, and it only works for the length of time that you have your finger on the button. And that applies to your mixer, to your app on the screen, or even on the laptop when you hit the quick keys. I love the way all 3 options work together, and they match. So whatever I do on the laptop, it's going to be showing on the app or even on the mixer. If I switch it again to this orange line, and then I can't remember what they call that back in math, but it's like when you have a beginning and then the arrow shows that the line goes on indefinitely. That means every time I hit that button, it's gonna stop the play. It does it like this. I hit it once, it's playing. I hit it, it stops it. Play, stop it. And then the obvious one with the arrows going in a circle, that's the loop. That's when it just keeps going over and over and over again. And you'll notice I was able to stop it by hitting the stop button and then highlight. It turns, you get a red ring around the sample that's playing, and you tap that sample and then that stops it. So stop. So stopping a sample is a 2-button press. So if I go like this one, DJ Log, you have to hit the stop button and then hit the one that is highlighted in red. That stops the sample from playing. Quicker way of doing that is just switching to a different bank, and then the sample will stop as well. So and that's not just something that's for the app. That's just the way it works. Period. With the any device that can control your samples. Once you jump from the bank that the sample is playing from, the sample will stop. All right. So let's go back to the regular view. And you'll notice even when I'm in the sampler mode, on my left and my right, I still get at least 3 cue points that I can use to trigger parts of the song. Go back there. And as I mentioned earlier, the app is so much more responsive when you are using the cable connected directly to your laptop. When you're going over Wi-Fi, there's some latency, and it's not super bad unless you're using the cue points. When you're using the cue points, then I wouldn't really do it unless I was just trying to set a cue point and then do something. But if I'm trying to play, like finger drumming with the cue points, don't do it over Wi-Fi. Do it with a hardwired connection. And that goes with any kind of computing that you're doing, like even if you're streaming. Don't stream over Wi-Fi if you don't have to. If you can plug your computer directly into your router or into an Ethernet port so you can have a hardwired connection, you're always going to have the quickest connection compared to a wireless or Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is cool, but it does introduce delays and some latency. All right, moving on. We have going up top. You'll notice you can see the full waveform, so you see the full song, the waveform, so you get an idea of where you're at in the song. It's not a touch strip, even though the screen is a touch screen. This waveform does not act like the touch strip like you would see on an NS7 or the Range 12s. It's just there for your visual indication to see how far along on the song you are, how much time you have left. It's just a visual indicator. To the left of that or to the right of that, depending on which deck you're looking at, you have a play button. It's a play pause button. So it controls the deck like I have a spinning platter on my Range 12. When I hit this play button, my platter starts spinning. It just as if I hit the start button right here on the deck. And you'll notice when I hit that, it stopped on the screen as well. So that's really cool. For those of you that use sync, you have the option to engage sync here. So, and you can turn it on and off. Once you turn sync on and the button turns blue, you get an off button right below it that allows you to turn sync off for each deck individually. So that's really cool as well. In the middle of the screen, the main screen, you have the library scrolling. This will allow you to scroll through the library up and down. Let me switch the screen on my laptop so I can see it. So if I wanted to, I could scroll through. I'm scrolling down through my list of my playlist, and I can, let's see, hit the tab button. It jumps me into that playlist, and then I can go through and just scroll songs. If I see a song that I like, I can highlight it and pull it over to the deck that I want it to play on. And if you want to, you can just drag it from that deck to the other deck and get your instant doubles going. You can scroll through, pull another song over, instant double. So you got a lot of control over your Serato DJ from this app. You don't have to touch your laptop nearly as much, especially if your crates are in order. You can just scroll, jump between crates, scroll through the library, and load songs without even having to touch your laptop. probably the only reason to touch your laptop when you use this app with a good mixer is, or Serato enabled mixer, is to search for a song. If you have a certain song in mind and you want to go into your search box and type it up and pull it up, that's probably the only reason you would need to touch your laptop when you have this available in front of you. If you're just going to be going through your library and just playing from crate to crate, you can just hit that tab button, and that will allow you to jump into different crates, jump back into a crate, pull them up, and then load a song. Load it to another. You can load it to another deck. Instant doubles comes in very handy with this. You also, in the middle, you have the option for your loops. You can do loop rolls. Switch it to a loop roll. And you can just slide. You don't even have to release your finger. You can just slide from 132 to a full 2-bar loop roll. Usually when I'm messing with loop rolls, I'm doing like 1/4. I don't really mess with the 132 because that's like just noise. Maybe depending on what genre you're playing, that might come in handy. But usually I'm messing with the 1/4 and 1/2 loop roll. Then you also have your manual loops where you can just auto loop. I mean, not manual loop. We just came from doing loop rolls. This is auto looping. And if you expand it, then that's when you get the manual looping. And then deactivate it by hitting the active button. So it's pretty powerful. And then if you have loops that you have created, so let's make one right now. So I've got that loop that I created. I'm going to assign it to a pad. So that didn't work. It didn't let me drag it to a pad, but let me try this. Let's set a loop in the program itself. And I hit the plus sign. That adds it there. Hit that lock. Let's see what happens if I go into the app, go out, and then go back in. Still nothing. So I'm wondering what the purpose of these pads up here up top are. Let's see. Let's deactivate that. So no. Maybe these pads just don't have any purpose because they're not reacting when I try to throw a loop in there. This song has a loop that's saved, but it's not coming up. So what if I go to loop roll, add it? Nope. So I think these top row, when you have the that section expanded, it doesn't really do anything. At least not for the loops. Good to know. So that's something I'm learning as you're learning. We're doing this all together. I have played around with it for quite a while, but obviously I haven't pressed every single button on the app. So let's go ahead and shrink down the screen. Let's stop that deck from spinning. And I think the last thing I haven't touched on was the Quantize button, which is down here in the middle in between both sets of pads. You can turn your quantization on. It's that little cue that you see in your Serato DJ up top between the link and the drop down for your waveform display. And that quantizes thing, I don't really use that quantization, mainly because it does what it says it does. It will quantize your hits, like especially if you're hitting your pads. Sometimes you may be hitting it and you want it to be a little bit off, but the quantization tries to shift it to where it thinks it sounds best. So I turn it off. It's not really necessary. It's not something I use in my normal use of Serato DJ. So also there is this QFX button. This QFX button is pretty much quick effects. It allows you to have quick access to your effects regardless of which tab you're in. You see that it stays up top, and you have your Q effects, and that if you hit that, it allows you to just turn your effects on and off from here regardless of what tab you're in. Even if you're not in the effects section, you still have access to turn your effects on. That's really cool because you might just want to have your effect available for you to turn on. If you have a mixer like the Newmark Scratch, you don't really have to worry about that because your paddles are probably closer than reaching up here to turn the QFX on, but it's nice to have it there as an option. If you go into the other view, let's see, I believe that's still there. Yeah, QFX is still there even if you have the deck view showing. You can pull your QFX up. You just lose the option to have your library scrolling right there. I think I would actually prefer to have my QFX up there instead of the library scrolling, because I can scroll from my mixer or from my Range 12 MK2. So that brings us to the end of this deep dive into the Serato Remote app. I think I've touched every button that was available to touch. I showed you what it did and how I incorporated it into my workflow. It's a really dope app. I think if you use Serato DJ Pro, you should probably get it. If you use Serato DJ Pro and you have an iPad or an iPhone. The iPhone is not really the best to use it with. I mean, it is there, it's an option, but it's easier to fit an iPad directly in between your decks and have all this visual feedback. So I hope you learned something. I know I learned something as I was experimenting and flowing through this. And stay tuned. We got more videos coming, more knowledge to drop and share. If you like what you're seeing and like what you're learning, make sure you hit the subscribe, the like button, share the video, and keep tuning back because we're going to have more and more videos coming. With that said and done, I'm out. Logistical Styles, keep spinning.